Welcome to TFR Let's Talk. I'm your host, Swapnil Bhartiya, and my next guest is Sean Wright, Lead Application Security SME at Immersive Labs. Sean, it's great to have you on the show.
Great. Thank you for having me.
Security has become an interesting topic these days. In early days, security used to be someone else's problem. Developers, they did not have to worry about it. There were silos there. But now, especially with the emergence of cloud-native technologies, it's kind of moving into developer pipeline. That's why we see things like DevSecOps. If you look at SREs, a lot of things are moving in there pipeline as well. So from what I want to understand from you, how do you see the cybersecurity landscape, not just from the technical point of view, vendors point of view, but also developers workflow point of view? Things are changing because the way we build infrastructure, the way we consume is also changing.
The way things are changing, they have changed a lot. If you look at the way we typically develop applications, there are two kind of aspects that have significantly changed since. The first being is we used to build everything internally in-house. With the advent of things like open source software, developers now use a significant amount more of things like libraries, open source libraries. I like to view applications more of a glue of different pieces of code that are then glued together to form the application that they want. The other thing is the way applications are developed and then releases are performed has significantly changed as well. So if you look in the past, we focused on big monolithic releases. You'd have your quarterly release or your annual release. Now we have releases sometimes happening every day at the click of a button with things like CI/CD. Once you pass the tests, everything's fine, out it goes. So I think those two things have significantly changed the way we approach development.
I want to just quickly talk a bit about Immersive Labs also. Give me just a bit background of the company and how you folks have also evolved over time with the things changing around you in security space.
Immersive Labs is kind of trying to provide hands-on ability to gain hands-on knowledge and awareness. If you go look at the past, traditionally the way we approached some sort of training essentially was very cumbersome. We used to do it as PowerPoint slides or presentations, maybe taking up a week. If you go look at the way, as I mentioned, the way software has been developed, it is continuous. It's lightning fast now. So there could be times where you probably not even going to be able to get a week off to go do a full week's training. So one of the things about Immersive Labs is we try have on-demand training, so it's a lot easier to fit into someone's time frame, as well as that real-world type approach to training. So it's not just a bunch of set of slides and multiple choice questions. We're actually getting our users to learn through doing, actually find the problem and solve the problem. It's kind of it's one of the ways I find that I learn best is actually working through the problem, seeing it for myself, and then fixing it.
While things are getting better, there is still a clear disconnect between AppSec developers and cybersecurity teams. If you look at all those cases that happen, whether ransomware attacks, it clearly shows that the teams were not even aware of where to look at, what to protect. So talk about, from your perspective, where do you see there is still a disconnect, where we are still far from the nirvana of everything is secure?
I think it comes down to something I've said before, understanding. If you have a look at the security teams, we are under pressure, making sure that systems are released securely, constantly worried about the company appearing in the media for all the wrong reasons. And then on the flip side, you have development teams constantly under pressure to deliver. So things like having a security team constantly putting up extra barriers just hinders their progress. So it's trying to see from both sides, understanding what each team is trying to do, and then work together. Ultimately, both teams will work for the same company. They should be trying to achieve the same goal for the company.
DevSecOps is there. Security is being taken very seriously. It's moving into developers' pipelines, CI/CD pipelines. But Do you see any trends where things are getting better?
It's hard. It's hard to say they're getting better when you see constant things in the media. But if you actually have a look at some of the things where application security is going, especially if you look towards a lot of the newer frameworks, things like cross-site scripting are really difficult with some of the later frameworks. And to me, that is a positive sign. It's showing that, hey, we've actually identified these issues that have been around for decades. I mean, cross-site scripting's been around for decades, and we're actually doing something about it. And yes, there's friction, but I've also seen, as you mentioned, things like DevSecOps and that. We're now starting to get the relevant teams engaged. Not entirely, but at least it's a step in the right direction.
Do you also see that we need to also change the way we look at security? So instead of it being, an action that we take after the fact the attack happens, we should do something where our infrastructure is kind of prepared for an attack like that.
Exactly. I kind of view security like a seatbelt. Right? When you're driving along on the road, it's generally not very useful until you're involved in an accident. Then you really want to make sure that you have that seatbelt. Security is no different. Until someone's going to attack you, it's not going to provide any value. But when that does happen, it's going to be the most valuable thing that you could have at that point in time.
Can you also share some insights on the technologies that are there, like polymorphing is one of those many examples where every instance is unique, so if you kind of increase work for bad actors, or you also decrease the incentive that they will get by compromised systems. So talk about some technology that are there that we can use to kind of mitigate some of these attacks.
As you correctly mentioned, try to increase the work that attackers have to do means that they'll either give up or go elsewhere. I really think that a lot of the things that we could do to prevent those attacks are things that are well known. If you have a look at many of the recent attacks, I think the pipeline attack was a compromised password. And we've seen this time and time again where really well-known security hygiene has led to the attack. Things like source code control, access control, all of those basically what are termed security fundamentals. If we have those in place and those are really nailed down, personally, I view that's how we go a long way to prevent the attackers. Because a lot of that's there and they put up a high barrier. One thing may fail, like defense in depth. One thing may fail, but then the attacker is going to have to overcome another barrier, and then they just give up and go elsewhere.
Let's talk about the cultural, social, and people aspect of security.
I think one of our biggest assets in terms of security is people. Think about it. Who configures the applications? Who monitors the applications? Who's running the applications? Who develops the code? Who picks up that USB in the parking lot and just plugs it into the computer? They are all humans. And we humans, unfortunately, have one big Achilles heel, and we make mistakes. Every single one of us. And as you mentioned previously, we have to be correct 100% of the time, and they just need us to be incorrect once or have a slip up once. So humans play probably the biggest role in security, in my opinion.
With security, one of the challenges that happen is that because of security issues, sometimes teams are forced to either delay the deployment or cancel the deployment. So are there cases where they are so pressured that they end up releasing vulnerable or compromised code? Is there anything that should be done to contain that? Is that a serious problem?
I think there's two reasons for this. One, there's the push, the pressure to release. There was an article that one of the reports was quoted in, and I think one of the things that was reported or someone commented on hit the nail on the head. Whenever will a development team be thanked for dropping a release because of fixing a major security issue? Almost never. The other angle is having awareness of the actual impact of the vulnerabilities. Take a look at the way we do cross-site scripting. Script alert script. It's a little pop-up box. So to me as a developer who doesn't know any better, I'm just going to annoy my user with pop-up boxes, not actually really understanding the full impact and how it could lead to credential loss and session hijacking and all that kind of stuff. So I think those two are really important, creating that awareness around the vulnerabilities, what they mean, and also ensuring teams have the appropriate priority and backing to fix these vulnerabilities.
Sean, thank you so much for taking him out today. And we went beyond just the research, the report that came out. We we talked about the whole security, cybersecurity landscape. This is a very critical topic because what's going on around us, we are all getting actually directly affected, whether it was compromising the pipeline or grid. So thanks for sharing those insights, and I'd love to have you back on the show. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.